Hi, my name is Darren Mostyn. Thank you for joining me in this masterclass. I'd like to say thank you to our hosts, ASUS, Blackmagic Design and Wex for making this masterclass possible. And I'm going to be showing you my favorite things in DaVinci Resolve 17. So I'll show you some stuff in the cut page, the edit page, and the color page. But before I do that, don't forget there's a competition running. You can show off your work and win prizes from the ASUS Pro Art range and also from Blackmagic Design. And the link to that is in the chat, so definitely worth checking that out and get yourself some prizes. And so basically we are a post facility. We're down here in Brighton. We produce content, we edit, we grade, we do finishing, we do broadcast, we do music promos, corporate, all sorts of stuff. And our tool of choice is DaVinci Resolve. We've worked with Resolve since version 7. So I've seen a lot of new versions of DaVinci Resolve coming out. And I've got to say 17 has really excited me. There are some amazing new features in here, stuff that I didn't even think was possible, but certainly I'm going to show you my favorite ones in here. And just before I do that, let's have a look at the kit that we're running. I've got down here a Mac Pro 2010, a really old one, which is running my scopes quite happily. I've got a 2019 Mac Pro down here, which is our usual main machine. That's got a job in it at the minute that was started in version 16, so I've not had a chance to update that. I'm not going to update that mid-job, so that's off for today. So I'm going to show you everything on a Mac Pro 2013, just in case you want to know what sort of performance I'm getting. We're running off the Mac Pro 2013. We've also got the advanced panel set, and what's been really exciting for me with DaVinci Resolve 17 coming out is they've replaced all the buttons on here. So this is like 10 years old technology. So you can imagine a lot of the buttons on here were becoming quite redundant. They didn't have the cut page or the edit page. They didn't have HDR. And all these buttons have now given me new functionality. So I can go straight to HDR, for example, by pressing a button. So this is really exciting. I'm still getting my head around it. I've got to relearn all that muscle memory, but that is really exciting for me. We've also got the ASUS Pro Art here. This is the PA32 UCXP. So this is our main monitor. It does 4K, it's doing HDR. I'm going to show you some of those features during this masterclass. So that's pretty much the kit overview. I'm going to start in the cut page and let's just dive straight in. I'll show you some of my favorite things. So in the cut page, one of the first new features is they now have an inspector in there. So this has come over from the edit page. And one of the features I want to show you, we did quite a lot of reformatting. So when we've made a program, particularly sort of branded content and that sort of thing, we have to reformat it for Instagram and mobile phones. So it goes out as 9:16 instead of 16:9, which you can actually do with this monitor, by the way. You can actually swivel that around. I'm not going to do it because the cable will probably come out. But you can do that with that monitor. So up here, you've got these quick keys that get you to those modes. So if I want to go to Instagram, I just press square here. And I'm now in 1080 by 1080. And what I have to do then is zoom in. And then obviously you've got to start doing some reframing now. So I need to rework on my positioning. And let's just undo that, because one of the new features in here is this thing called Smart Reframe. And what I can do is literally press reframe and it will analyze my shot. So you see that analyzing now. And it does the reframing for me. So I've zoomed in and I've now just got to reframe the shot, and it bases it on subject or who's speaking. So watch this. If I just play that through. And it moves to the other girl when she's speaking and then back again. So that is a really cool new feature. So that's Smart Reframe. I love that. And another cool feature in the cut page is this new audio trim. If I click on there, we can now go to a bit of dialogue. So she says at the beginning there, so let's just edit that out. So I'm going to go into trim mode. And when I start trimming, you see that we get an enlarged waveform down here automatically. And then we can come in there. There you go. So it just makes it a lot easier to do audio trimming. So that's the new audio trim function. So let's have a look what's new in the edit page. If I go to this folder here called extras, I've got a shot here. It's basically a whole series of edits. It's part of the program that's been exported as a single file. And I want to use bits of that in this edit. So what I'd have to do traditionally is go to the media pool and scene cut detect it and then take the shots that I want. But what I can do now is I can just grab it. I'm going to append at end to my timeline, so it goes on to the end. I'm going to mark it up. And if we go to timeline and just find where it is. It's here, detect scene cuts. That's going to analyze this shot now, and it's going to work out where the edit points are for me, chop them in the timeline, and then I'm ready to go. So I don't have to do I don't have to go to any other page. I can just work straight away in here. So it's really useful. We do this stuff all the time when I'm doing promos and things like that. We just get delivered, particularly when we're doing broadcast work. We might be on a long form documentary and we get a section of clips. I can just put them on the timeline, detect the scene cuts, take out what I don't want, and we're good to go. So there you see, that's done that straight away. I can just go between each one. Let's just go back and check they're on the right edit point, which they are. So it's really nice, detect scene cut. Another cool feature in here, if I've got this shot here where she's chopping this prawn in half, I've actually got some cutaways in here that can sync. So if I go to my side view, this is obviously not color graded. Some of these have been color graded. If I go through here and you can see there, she's chopping that prawn in half there. And I'm going to bring that down onto the timeline, but I'm not going to try and sync it up manually now. That's going to take me a little bit of time. So I'm just going to drag and drop it straight on, and I'm just going to drop it onto the timeline. I'm just going to take the audio away. Sorry, let's clear that out. And so that's my side view in, but it's not in sync. And I've also got a top view of that as well. So let's just grab that and just drag it on. And I'm just going to throw it anywhere on the timeline. I'm not actually going to try and sync it up. And I'm going to use this new tool in the edit page to sync them up automatically. So I line up the 3 shots. So I'm just using my pen, left drag, and then a right hand click and just say auto align clips. And I've got a choice of timecode or waveform. So I'm going to use timecode on this because they are timecode synced. And watch what happens when I press that. They jump into the right place, and I can now edit these in really easily. So let's just play that from the top. Let's just for speed, I'm going to pull that along a little bit. So there we go. So we've got go to our side view first, and that's perfectly in sync. And then we're going to go to the top view just before she actually slices that prawn's head off. There we go. And then at that point, when she's finished the cut, I want to bring it both back to the wide. So I'm just going to trim that back, and then let's just play that through. So you see, perfectly in sync, and we're back. So that was really quick and easy to do. I didn't have to line it up by markers or anything like that. Just throw it on the timeline, auto align it. That is a really time-saving feature. I love that one. What we got next on here? So I'm going to do, oh yes, so if I go down here, we've got a transition here, okay? So there's a transition. And what I can do now is sit on that transition, and I can go to my other transitions. And we've got a live preview now. So if I can find the right place on here, there we go, video transitions. And if I just put my mouse on these transitions and move from left to right, we can live preview what the action of that transition will look like. So this is really quick and easy. So let's have a look up here. I've got that blur dissolve, sorry. Let's drag and drop that on and press play. There we go, lovely. So I can also do that with titles actually. So if I go to my titler, and they've actually made some new stylized titles as well. So these are really cool. Again, left and right on your mouse. You can see that going there really easily. And I'm going to drag and drop that onto video level 2. Let's play that through. So these are really quite stylish now. Some of these used to be a little bit weird before, but they've actually done some nice clean titles. And one thing that people have been asking for a long time is the ability to view the fonts live as a preview. So if I just go to my inspector here, and let's just highlight that text, and we can go down here, and there you can see we get a live preview of our fonts. So again, really useful stuff. It's just little things like that that really just makes editing far more enjoyable when you can just do simple things like that. So what else in the edit page? Oh yes, I want to show you this. So there's some filters in here. And we've got some new filters that are for the edit page. So we can do things like keying, for example. So here, now you've got some keying tools. Sorry, that's jumping up and down because I've got my live preview on. And so we can do actual keying without going into Fusion or the color page. So this again is going to speed you up. Also, if you are an editor and some of the editors don't know how to use the color page or Fusion, you can just do it straight away in your timeline. So you put your green screen, for example, on V2, drop the key on, and you're good to go. And also in here, what I really like is they've actually put noise reduction in here. So I can take the noise reduction, which is the noise reduction from the color page, drop it onto a clip, go to my inspector, and you see the inspector's been redesigned as well. It's a much cleaner layout now. So if I go to my effects here, let's just add a little bit of noise reduction. Now, obviously, noise reduction is processor intensive. It's heavy on your graphics card. So let me just play that through. I've got a 12 gig graphics card in here. So that's playing through. But if you did want to have it so if that's causing you problems, let's say you're on a laptop and you've put noise reduction on, you might just want to render that shot and export it out, and then you would bring that clip back in and replace it on the timeline. Well, now in version 17 of DaVinci Resolve, you can literally right-hand click on the clip and you can say render in place. And what that does is it's going to render that shot. You get a choice of codecs. You say render. It's going to ask you where you want to render it to. So I'll just put that straight into, I don't know, movies. And you say go, and it's going to render that now. And it's going to create a brand new clip. So where up here, you see that's just created it. So it's called render to. These are separate clips now. So that can be included in my edit. So when I export that out, let's say I'm exporting it to another program or whatever I want to do, that shot has been replaced. So that doesn't play with the slowed down. It's not restricted by the noise reduction I put on there. I can literally just play it back. Now, if I want to go back to the original, all you have to do is right-hand click and say decompose to original. You're back where you were. So then you could refine that noise reduction if you wanted to, or just clear it off. So that's my main sort of highlights in the edit page. If you have a look at my YouTube channel, which if you just search my name, Darren Mostyn, I've done a top 10 favorite things in the cut page and the edit page as an episode in itself. And there's a whole ton of free DaVinci Resolve tutorials in there, so it's worth checking out. Okay, so over to the color page, there are tons of new things to show you in here. This is a music video that I graded a while ago, and this is the actual grade. Sorry, that notary is a bit of a mess, but they were happy with the grade. So let's take a look at what we've got in here. There are loads of new things. We've got high dynamic range, which I'm going to show you in a moment. But one of my favorite things that came about is this thing called the color warper. So if we click on here, this actually pops out actually. So if you press here, you can pop this out, and you can pop the curves out as well. So if you go to curves, over here, they are now on a pop out there. So that's really good. But yeah, this color warper is fantastic. And what this is doing, it's a kind of like, it's quite organic to feel. When you start making color changes in here, everything feels quite organic. And I'll show you why. Basically what's happening here, this is hue going round, okay? And saturation is going from the center is 0 saturation, out to the edges is full saturation. So watch this, if I just grab, so the sky here is blue, obviously, so if I take our blue point here and push in towards the center, you see that the sky starts desaturating, come back out again, it's saturated, and if I start turning this round, you see that it's changing hue. All right, so that's the basic idea of the color warper. But it's easier to use than that. You can actually just go onto here. So if I do the same thing on the sky, I can actually grab the sky and start moving it towards the outside. So I'm actually using the item that I want to change as the tool. So you can just push out here, it's changing saturation. And if I push away, it's going to go towards the greens, and up here, it's going to go towards purple. So a really easy way of changing your colors. But what's nice is because it grabs more than just the color you're on, you don't get much sort of noise and artifacts in there. It's got a really, it's just a really nice organic feel. So for example, if we take this patch of grass here and this patch of grass here, they're two slightly different colors. And if I just want to make this one a bit more lush green, as it were, I can literally grab it. Just wait while this also saves. So I can just take it here and push it towards saturation out a little bit, but I'm just going to change its hue. And there we go. And you see that's just really clean. That's matching much nicer now to the other piece of grass. And if I'd have tried to key that, it would have been a bit of a mess. This color warper just is, it's just such a nice way of grading. So let's just reset that. And what I want to do is just show you what's going on here. So we've got color space here, so you can choose the different color spaces you want to work in. So I'm working in HSL color space. And down here, you've got these numbers which represent these stems. So at the minute, I've got 6 points going out and I've got 6 points along each stem, if you like. I don't know what they're actually called, but I'm going to call them stems. And I can change that. So this one here is hue, and this one here is saturation. So if I add here, if I go into here and add more stems, I've now got 16 of these. So what you get now is a tighter area that's selected. So if I do the same on the grass now, and push it towards saturation, it's a much tighter concentrated area. It's not pulling as much as it was before because we've got more stems. So this is how you can really start controlling it. So let me pick a better shot. I'll show you what I mean. If we click on here, so I'm going to go to HSL and I'm going to make the 16. You can actually lock these together so you get 16 by 16, or you can get 24. Right, so what I can do now, in here we've got our sky, and you see here it's quite saturated and here it's less saturated. So I'm going to use the color warper to balance those up. So let's just find the area that I'm on. And in fact, if you press Alt, it shows you the range that's being selected. Okay, so if I want to adjust this bit of sky here, that is the point there that it wants. This bit of sky is here. So what I'm going to do is lock these so they don't move. I only want to move this area. So I can take my drawing tool here. I'm going to draw along those. I'm going to convert those to pins now. So pins mean it won't move. So I'm going to convert those to pins. Now I'm going to go back over here. I need to just control click that so it becomes not a pin. And now I can push saturation out here, and you see that it's moving just this region, but not this region here. And I can change that if I want. So I can just control click another one. And that gives me a lot of flexibility. So we were doing really controlled movements, but I'm not getting any extra noise in here because everything else around it is moving with it. So it's really nice to work with. I can also, in here, there is feathering. So if I click on the hue and press feather, each time I press this, it goes 1 point back towards where it was to start with. So you can basically do a bit of grading and then you can reduce it back. So again, that's a really nice tool. So this is hue and saturation. If I click here, what we've got now is hue and luminance. So we can adjust the brightness and the colors. So we've got two grids. This grid is for this side, so it's your blues and yellows, and grid 2 does this side. So I'm going to work on grid 1, and I'm going to up the rows to 12, check them in HSL, color space. And what I'm going to do, if I want to warm the sky up, for example, if I could just click in here and just push towards the left, it's going to start going towards warmer tones. To the right is cooling it off. Lifting up is going to make it brighter, and bringing it down is going to make it darker. So that's kind of what's happening here. But you see, as I move that, this whole mesh is moving. So I'm affecting a lot of area, and that's probably a greater area than I want to affect. So what I'm going to do is start using the pins like we did before, but in an automatic way. So let's just reset that. And down here, you've got something called auto lock. If I switch that on, we've got our 2 points here. So we can go to 2 points or 3 points or whatever we want. I'm going to put that to 2 points. I'm going to put it onto column. And now let's go onto this grass. So let's go into grid 2. And if I just click in here and pull down, it's pulling down the luminance of the greens here that I've selected, but it's locking to either side. So all this area here and this area here are not being affected. So I've got much tighter control over what's going on. Now if I reset that, if I now use rows instead of columns, what you're doing is locking the luminance, but you can change the color. So if I push the greens here, and I'm going to push it out that way, you see it's changing color. So it's getting more green, or it's going more towards the reds, but it's not affecting this whole area here. And you can get more precise than that if you press this box. So if I press here, I'm now going 2 points either side of the point that I'm working with is locked. So you get really fine control. So you can see I can start eliminating that stone wall from the hue shift. So that's the color warper. Again, I can feather this back. So every time I press feather, it goes 1 point back towards where it was originally. So add a bit and then pull it back a little bit. So that's the color warper. It's really easy to use. I love this sort of hue saturation one. It's just really easy. Just grab your image and do it. For working with skin tones particularly, you've got a skin tone line here. Let me just show you quickly. Let's reset that. If I just grab her skin tone here, you can just push up and down, and you can push it actually towards the skin line there. So very quick and easy way of working. I love the color warper. So the next tool I want to show you is the Magic Mask. Now this is brilliant. So this is utilizing the DaVinci Resolve neural engine. So this has seen some development since version 16 and now in version 17, where we're getting really intelligent tools. This is brilliant. So let me find a shot. So it's clip number 12. And what we've got is our lead running through this garden, and then she waves, okay? And what I want to do is isolate her from the background. So excuse my messy node tree. I'm just gonna add another node. And traditionally what you would do for this is you would take a power window and a tool like this, and you would draw around her like so. I'll just do this quite quick. And then you would track it forwards or backwards. And so let's just track. And there you see, and because her hand comes up and she starts waving, the track hasn't really got much of a chance. It's the world's best tracker, in my opinion, but it's not going to get really good on that stuff. So you're going to have to do that frame by frame and literally rotoscope it. So a quicker way of doing that is using the Magic Mask. So I'm going to click on here, and this is basically split into two areas. You've got person or features. So I can go to a particular feature of someone. So you've got hair, face, or go to person. And what you've got to do is take your tool here and your sort of selector, and just select an area. Now you just do small little strokes, and what I've done there is select her face, and because I'm in person mode, it's recognized that this is a person. So if I put this on, you can see the region that's a little bit slow to catch up. There we go. So now it's highlighted what it thinks I've selected, and you see it's intelligently grabbed everything that's to do with that person. And what you can do is make further strokes as well. The more strokes you make, the longer it takes to process, but you can just literally add a couple more strokes just to identify what's what. Now I'm going to go forward. It automatically tracks now, so press forwards and watch what happens. So as it goes through, it's going to keep, it's got a really tight mass. It's drawn a shape around her. You can see, I mean, just how good that detail is. And watch what happens now when her hand comes up. It's completely following her. That is pretty amazing. Okay, so it's just lost it a little bit there. So we'll go back and fix that in a moment. And as you can see, it's not amazingly quick, but for what it does, it's a lot quicker than rotoscoping it. Okay, so I'll stop that there. I think we get the general idea. Let's just go back to the points that it missed, which is here. And you know what? I don't think it even missed them. It's actually kept them in. Let me go frame by frame. So I'm just using my left and right arrow keys. No, it's actually done it. It's just a little bit on the hand there. So I could, just to show you how you would do it, you basically just add another stroke. So I'll just touch there. That's now included. It's brilliant. That is the Magic Mask. Now this was in faster mode. This is not even in the best quality you can have. So if I put that into better mode, if you watch, in fact, if I do it with a highlight, it's a little bit easier to see. Let's take that off and use highlight. It's doing the same thing, but I can see the mask a little bit better here. So, I mean, that has done an amazing job of that. But if I just go to better, and what I can do is add extra points or take points away even. So if I click on here, let's take away just, it's done such a good job, I can't even find anything to take away. Just on the edge of her cheek there, just touch that. And obviously you can zoom in here. So I use my middle mouse, there you go. So let's just cut that off a little bit tighter. And I'm in better mode as well. So it's just, I don't know, it amazes me, this thing. Let's just reset that back. And take the highlight off. So what we're going to do with this, well, basically I wanted her to stand out from the background a little bit better. So I can go to my tools here. I'm in HDR tools in this. So let's just go to regular primary tools. Let's bring our gamma down a little bit. Oh, sorry, it's a little bit slow to react there. And obviously I'm now affecting our character. So I need to invert that by clicking here, and that will then do the background. There you go. That's a bit extreme, but you get the general idea. So that's the Magic Mask. It's brilliant. So another thing I like in DaVinci Resolve 17 is that the fact I can use playheads in split view. So if we click up here in the split view, I've got 4 playheads. And if you haven't used playheads before, they're brilliant. You can basically leave them wherever you want in your program and switch to them at any point. So if you go up here and go color, active playhead, just choose which one you want. So if I want to go to playhead A, drop on there. And if I press play now, that's the playhead that's active. The B, C, and D are now parked in their places until I switch to them. So you can switch them by just clicking on them as well. but it means I can look at 4 different scenes at once. So this is when I want to use my grading monitor and check my balance is correct across the program. So I've got 4 different scenes here. You could do that before with stills or versions, but you couldn't then fine tune it. So the nice thing with the Playheads is I can go in here and actually get the exact frame that I want in there to have a look at my balance. So for example, this one down here is a little bit we're sort of on the move, so I can't analyze it very well. So if I go to here, that's a much better frame for me to check. So it's just for checking my balance, but I really like using Playheads. So that's a really nice addition. So let's come out of the split view. So the next thing I want to show you is probably the most talked about thing in DaVinci Resolve 17. It's the high dynamic range. So we now have dedicated high dynamic range color grading tools. This is amazing. So our typical primary tools consisted of these 4 wheels. So you've got lift, gamma, gain, and offset. When we move into high dynamic range, you've now got 7 of these. So you've got black, dark, and shadow. That's on 3 color wheels. And then moving on up, we've got light, we've got highlight, and we've got specular highlights. So we've got really fine control over 6 zones, plus a global one, which does the overall. Now these are a little bit more intelligent tools as well, because we can change where they're affecting. So let me show you. If I click on this grayscale, and if I select any one of these, so let's go to shadow, and if you click up here, it will show you the range that it's affecting. So it's just that range there, okay? If I click on light, that's just that range. Dark is doing right down at the bottom. If we go right down here, black is just doing the very, very edge there, okay? So again, really fine control, but these are, oh, sorry, before I show you that, down here, we've got our main controls as well. So if I go to contrast, and you see that you get a really nice roll off as well. So these tools have got really nice roll off. They're a little bit more intelligent than just cutting off at the bottom. Our global settings here, we've got temperature and tint. So you can see that happening in the grayscale. And obviously here, magenta and green. That's our tint. And obviously we can adjust the color itself. Let's just reset that. Let me just show you what else is happening. In here, we've got this zone system. So each of these can be altered. So let me open up the zone tool. And what this does now is show you what each item is doing. So if I click on dark, for example, this is the dark line. So 0 here is mid-gray, so that's your 18% gray. And you've also got the 100 nit line here. So this is up to standard dynamic range. That's the max out you can get at standard dynamic range. And we're going up to, our scopes go up to 10,000 nits here, which we're not going into. But the zones can be controlled. So I can adjust where that dark point is affecting. And also the fall off, you see this fall off here, this little red line here indicates the range that that one control has effect on. So if I click on here, you can actually control the fall off here. So a lot of these overlap as well, so there's no problem with that, and that actually helps with the tone. So when you're and the contrast, it actually helps smooth it out. So let's have a look at that on a real scenario. That's kind of the zone system. You can add extra zones as well. You can have as many of these zones as you want. And the global button here, you can actually detach it by clicking here. So it's not banked there all the time. So you'd have black, dark, shadow, light. So let's click on a clip here. So obviously this is classically shot. You're not sure where to balance for. You've got the exterior. Do you balance for the interior? Or do you get this sort of compromise that we've got here? So this is where the high dynamic range tools really come into their own. And you can use the HDR tools in SDR. I think I mentioned that before, but that's what we're doing here. Let's start off with our global setting. So what we're gonna do is just increase exposure. So you've got exposure tools here, and you've got saturations. You've got exposure and saturation for each individual item. Again, that's just really powerful. So let's lift up the exposure here. And I'm gonna bring that right up. Around about here, somewhere around about there. And now what I'm going to do is go to my blacks. Now you can quick jump to the 3 highlights or the 3 dark areas by pressing on the first and end circle, or you can cycle through using this. Okay, so I'm going to go to my blacks, and I'm going to just drop that down, drop the exposure down there. So that's going to bring us our shadows back, our deep shadows. Let's bring that back a little bit more. somewhere around about there. And then let's take our dark regions. I'm not going to do too much. I'm just going to bring it up a little bit. I don't know how well you can see that moving. In fact, if I just press Alt and F, that'll give you a slightly better view so you can see what's going on here. And obviously I'm keeping a good eye on my monitor here, just checking for detail. And let's go to our shadows. I'm not going to change too much in my shadow. If you want to see what it's affecting, just press that key button there. Yeah, so I don't really want to touch the shadows there at all. Let's move on into our light. So this is where I'm going to start getting the exposure back in this window. So let's go to our light. Let's just check what it's great. Yeah, so this is really the one we want. So I'm going to get our exposure tool here. I'm going to pull exposure down as far as I can. Oops, let's bring it down a little bit more. Let's go for it. And you can see that window, all the highlight information is being recovered in there really nicely. Okay, so let's just do Command D so you can see before and after. So we've got good exposure in the shop interior. We've got good exposure on the exterior. Let's just tweak it a little bit more. So if I go to my highlight, let's see what that's affecting. It's kind of the same as the light here. So there's a little bit of crossover between those two. Let's just see where they are in here. And go to my specular highlight. And what I can do here is actually move the zone. So where's that going? Yeah, that's covering pretty much what we're covering in the light and highlight. So I'm going to move that zone right up there. And actually you can see on my histogram here where it needs to be. And the zone just covers it. And now I can use that just to pop those specular highlights a little bit at the top. And so there you see, we've got a much better balanced shot. That's really working for me. If I just press Command D again, that's where we were. And that's where we've gone. Again, just using the high dynamic range tool. So it's a really, really useful tool. You can then go and add a little bit of midtone detail into that if you just want to refine it a bit. And don't forget, you've got so down here it's a little bit yellow. So let's see which zone that's been affected in. It's not light. It's probably dark or black even. Yeah, so it's being affected by dark, I'd say. So I'm just going to pull the saturation down a little bit there. And I could mask this off and all that sort of stuff, but there we're in a much better place. So that's the high dynamic range tool. So the last thing I want to show you is the RCM, the Resolve color management tools have completely been overhauled in DaVinci Resolve 17. So I'm going to change project for that. And this is an actual broadcast project that we worked on, and it's currently in standard dynamic range. Now what I want to do is show you how to convert it ready for use in high dynamic range. So high dynamic range at the minute, you're really talking about Amazon and Netflix, but I think with the advent of the iPhone 12 coming along, this is now completely HDR compatible. What we've got here is our grading monitor is capable of doing 1200 nits. So this is a true HDR mastering monitor. So it's full 4K, 1200 nits. So you need 1000 nits to be able to master in HDR. So I want to take this SDR image and put it into HDR color space so I can start blowing the highlights up a little bit more. So how do we do that? Let's go, I'm just going to change the mode here so you can see the node tree. Down here, if we go to our project settings, you can see we're in 4K here. So far we've been in HD, but we're in true 4K, or we're in Ultra HD. And if I go to my color management here, you see at the moment we're in, this is the new DaVinci RGB color management section. Okay, so we've got Resolve color management presets. And what they've done is given you all these presets, so it's now much simpler to A, understand it, but B, to choose what mode you want to be in. So we're currently in SDR 709, okay? That's our Resolve color management preset. Now our output color space is Rec 709 Gamma 2.4, which is what we want for regular SDR broadcast. Now I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna change that to be HDR color space. So I'm gonna choose P3, because this is calibrated to P3. I'm going to choose, we want 1000 nits for our reference level. And we're going to choose this, which is a PQ curve. So it's a PQ curve in HDR, 1000 nits. So let's press that. And when I press save, it's going to update. And the image goes, what looks like it's gone flat. But in actual fact, it needs changing into HDR color space because the monitor at the minute is set to SDR color space. This monitor can't reflect HDR color space. It doesn't have the capability. This is quite an old Apple Cinema display. If this was a HDR display, then it would be fine. So I'm going to need to switch this monitor into HDR. So I'll just flick around the back. So at the minute it's in Rec 709. Let's just change that preset to be DCI-P3. And now you really start seeing this monitor sing. So I'm looking at this in HDR. It's still the SDR image. So that looks exactly as it did in Rec 709 SDR, but now we're in HDR. I've changed it to P3 color space. So now I've got the extra nits available. And if you look at my scope down here, you see we've got a 100 nit line, which is the edge of standard dynamic range, and we're just about hitting it. So now when I go to my high dynamic range tools, I can push beyond 100 nits. So let's have a look what we can do. If I take my light, let's just check again what's being exposed where. So what I want to do is just pop her hair highlights a little bit. So let's see if that's light or highlight. Yeah, so that's in light. Unless I change the zones, that will be covered in under light. So I'm going to click on here just to check again. Okay, I'm going to do it and then I'm going to adjust the zone. So because it's covering a little bit more than I want to. So I'm going to push the exposure up. Sorry, I need to undo that because I'm on a particular node. I need to create a new node. Sorry, I'm just going to go back a little bit. Let me create a new node. I'm going to add a serial here. So I was inside a power window then, which is why it looks a little bit strange. Let's go and adjust our light exposure. There we go, and adjust our highlights a little bit. And you can see now we're going above the 100 nit line. And I think the rule with HDR is don't push it just because you can. I can go all the way to 1,000 nits here, but there's no need. That looks great. So I'm just going to add a little bit extra in the highlights. Let's lift our global a little bit more. So that's where we were in SDR, and that's where we've gone in HDR. And I can adjust the zone. So let's go to that light that I did, which is this one here. And I'm just going to push the zone up a little bit so it doesn't affect as much of her general face. It's more the highlight here. And that's what I want it to work with. And that's looking pretty good to me. So Resolve color management has really been simplified. You've got these really good settings and you still have control. If you want to go into the custom settings, you can go in and change every single individual element. But the fact there's a few presets in there just helps you get started with moving from SDR to HDR. So I'm loving those tools. So I hope you enjoyed that overview of some of my favorite things in DaVinci Resolve 17. Check out my YouTube channel. There's a whole load of Resolve 17 tutorials up there. They're all free. And thank you to the hosts for making this masterclass happen. So ASUS ProArt Displays, Blackmagic Design and Wex. And yeah, look after yourselves and thank you very much.